As I lay in bed, lost in thought after a long day, my husband entered the room with an unusual energy in his expression. He sat beside me, gently stroking my arm, and leaned in for a kiss. There was something different about that night, something that broke from our routine, and I could feel it. Our connection had always been deep, both emotionally and physically, and I could usually tell when he had something on his mind. But tonight, it was more than that. There was an unmistakable excitement in him that I couldn't quite place. When he kissed me, it was with a passion that sent a shiver down my spine. As we pulled apart, he leaned in close and whispered, "I have something special planned for us tonight." His words piqued my curiosity, and I smiled, intrigued by what he might have in store. Over the years we had found ways to keep the spark alive, exploring different aspects of our relationship, but his tone hinted at something new, something unexpected. I caught a flicker of nervousness in his eyes, tempered by excitement. He stood up, reached for his phone and quickly typed out a message. I watched him, my curiosity growing but trusting that whatever he had planned would be thoughtful. Moments later there was a knock at the door. My heart quickened as I tried to guess what was happening. He walked over to the door and opened it, revealing his best friend standing there with a smile. For a moment I was confused. Why was his friend visiting so late? His best friend, someone I'd known for years, stepped inside, and the two of them exchanged a glance that made everything clear in an instant. My mind began to race as I pieced together the situation, but I still couldn't quite believe it. Was this really happening? I looked at my husband, who wore a playful grin. He approached me, took my hand, and gently pulled me from the bed. His touch was both comforting and steadying as my heart raced with anticipation. "We've talked about trying something different," he said softly, his eyes searching mine for any sign of unease. I nodded slowly, recalling the conversations we'd had in passing about being more adventurous in our intimacy. It had always seemed like a far-off fantasy, something fun to imagine but never act on. Now, standing in the room with his best friend, it no longer felt like just an idea. It was real, and the reality was both exhilarating and terrifying. I glanced between the two of them, my husband waiting for my reaction, and his friend standing a bit awkwardly, as though unsure of how I would respond. I felt my cheeks flush as my body reacted in ways I hadn't expected. Taking a deep breath, I realized I wasn't afraid. I trusted my husband more than anyone, and if this was something he truly wanted to explore, I was willing to take that step with him. I gave him a hesitant but reassuring smile, and that was all he needed. He kissed me again, deeply and passionately, and I found myself melting into the moment. His friend joined us cautiously, first standing nearby, then reaching out to touch me gently, testing the boundaries. It felt strange at first, feeling someone else's hands on me while my husband watched, but the initial awkwardness soon gave way to something entirely new, something thrilling and intense. It was like stepping into a dream, where the edges of our usual life blurred into an unfamiliar but exhilarating experience. Every sensation was heightened. The feel of every touch and every kiss electrified me in ways I hadn't imagined. The night unfolded unpredictably, each moment taking us further into uncharted territory. At times, I couldn't tell where one set of hands ended and another began. I lost myself completely in the intensity of it all. My husband's friend was respectful and careful, always checking in to ensure we were both comfortable. My husband, meanwhile, watched me closely, his eyes filled with both love and desire. It made me feel more wanted than I ever had before. Knowing he was as captivated by the experience as I was only fueled my emotions, making me feel more alive and connected to him than ever. This wasn't just about physical intimacy, it was about trust. It was about pushing boundaries together and exploring something new and thrilling as a couple. In those moments I felt closer to him than I ever had, even as we shared this deeply intimate experience with another person. As the night continued, we explored one another in ways that were both familiar and entirely fresh. There was no jealousy or awkwardness, just an overwhelming sense of connection and pleasure. My husband had clearly thought this through, making sure I felt safe, loved, and supported every step of the way. His friend was patient and considerate, never overstepping the silent limits we had set. When the night finally came to an end, we lay together tangled in the sheets, our bodies exhausted but our spirits exhilarated. My husband kissed me softly, his gaze full of love and satisfaction. "How do you feel?" he asked, gently brushing a strand of hair from my face. As I looked up at him, a wave of emotion swept over me. Love, gratitude, and exhilaration. "I feel amazing," I whispered, and I truly did. It wasn't just the physical satisfaction of the night, but the knowledge that we had shared an incredibly personal and intimate experience and emerged stronger because of it. Shortly after, his friend left, leaving the two of us alone. We curled up together, my head resting on his chest as I listened to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. I felt secure, cherished, and completely at peace. This wasn't just a wild night, it was a testament to the depth of our relationship, to the trust and love we had cultivated over the years. In the days that followed, we didn't talk much about what had happened, but there was a renewed spark between us, an unspoken understanding that we had crossed into new territory together. Our bond, already strong, now felt even deeper and more unshakable. We had experienced something most couples never do, and it had only brought us closer. Looking back on that night, I still marvel at how it unfolded, unexpected, thrilling, and intimate in ways I could never have foreseen. More than anything, it reminded me of how crucial trust, communication, and openness are in a relationship. My husband and I had always been good at discussing our needs and desires openly, and this experience was a direct result of that honesty. If there's one thing that night taught me, it's that love and intimacy can take many forms. Sometimes, the most surprising experiences bring you closer to the person you love. That night is one I'll never forget, not just for what happened, but for what it symbolized. It represented the strength of our connection, the depth of our trust, and the endless possibilities of a relationship built on understanding and love. Now, as I reflect on that night, I feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude for my husband, for his love, and for the way he continues to surprise me, even after all these years. Our relationship feels stronger than ever, and I know that whatever the future holds, we'll face it together, just as we always have. For anyone wondering if an experience like this could strengthen their bond, my advice is simple. Trust each other, communicate openly, and don't be afraid to explore new possibilities together. You might discover a deeper connection than you ever imagined. As the days passed, the memory of that unforgettable night stayed with me like a treasured secret. My husband and I returned to our daily routines, but there was an unspoken bond between us that had grown even stronger. It felt as though we had unlocked a new level of intimacy, something that went far beyond physical closeness. We had shared something daring and vulnerable, and it left me feeling more connected to him than ever. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with the same mischievous smile he'd worn that night, and it would send my heart racing all over again. We didn't need to talk about it, the experience spoke for itself. But it left me wondering, would this become a regular part of our relationship, or was it just a one-time thing? Surprisingly, I wasn't afraid of the answer. The idea of exploring more together excited me. My husband had always been attentive to my needs, and this experience had shown me that our love could evolve in ways I hadn't imagined. It wasn't just about fulfilling fantasies. It was about trust, about granting each other the freedom to experience pleasure without limitations, knowing that our bond was strong enough to support it. One evening, as we sat together on the couch watching a movie, he brought it up casually. "You know, I've been thinking about that night," he said, glancing at me thoughtfully. "How did you really feel about it?" I smiled, knowing he genuinely cared about my feelings. "Honestly, it was incredible," I admitted. "I never thought I'd be comfortable with something like that, but with you it felt natural, it felt safe." He nodded, taking my hand in his. "I'm glad you feel that way," he said. "Seeing you like that, you, Pierre, first, changed me absolutely. I've never felt this before, but the moment I had to help you through the thick of it, I no longer see you as just a free." His words warmed my heart. "Do you think we'd ever do it again?" I asked softly, my curiosity piqued. He shrugged lightly. "Only if it's something you want," he replied. "I'd never push you into anything, but if you enjoyed it as much as I did, I'd love to explore more together." I appreciated his honesty and openness. That was one of the things I loved most about him, his willingness to communicate and ensure we were always on the same page. It wasn't just about chasing fantasies, it was about deepening our connection and making sure we both felt valued and understood. Over the next few weeks, we had more conversations about our desires, our boundaries, and what the future might look like for us. It was exhilarating to talk so openly, knowing that we could continue growing together in ways that kept our relationship exciting. We were unafraid to push limits, but we always did so with respect for each other's emotions and comfort. One night, after a long dinner with friends, we found ourselves revisiting the idea. This time, though, we approached it with more intention. We wanted to ensure that anyone we invited into our relationship understood the dynamics between us, respected our boundaries, and added to the experience in a meaningful way. It wasn't about including someone just for the sake of it. It was about enhancing what we already shared. It was about deepening the love and trust we had already built. We both agreed that if we were to include someone else, they would need to share our values and respect the strength of our relationship. This wasn't just about physical intimacy, it was about an experience that could bring us even closer. As we stepped into this new phase of our relationship, we approached it with care and patience. We didn't just explore with others, we found new ways to connect with each other. The threesome had opened a door for us, but it wasn't the centerpiece of our relationship. It was simply one part of a larger picture. A reminder that our love was rooted in trust, open communication, and a shared willingness to try new things. Each time we ventured into something unfamiliar, it felt like we were rediscovering one another. The thrill, the anticipation, and the closeness all reignited my feelings for him. He wasn't just my husband, he was my partner in every sense of the word. Together, we navigated this journey, side by side, and it made me feel more secure in our relationship than ever before. Over time, I became more confident in who I was and what I wanted. My husband had always encouraged me to embrace my desires, to be self-assured, and to know that he would stand by me no matter what. That night had marked a turning point, not only in our relationship but for me as an individual. It showed me that I could embrace new experiences without losing who I was. In the quiet moments after our passionate nights, we would lie together, his arms wrapped around me, and I would feel an overwhelming sense of peace. Our love felt unshakable, our bond unbreakable. We had tested new waters and emerged even more connected, and that was the most beautiful part of all. The threesome had been an unforgettable experience, but more importantly, it revealed the depth of our connection. It wasn't about the act itself, it was about the trust and love that made it possible. It showed us that we could face anything together and remain open to exploring new dimensions of our relationship without judgment or fear. Ultimately, it was love that drove everything. It was the kind of love that allowed us to be vulnerable with each other, to share our most private desires without worrying about rejection. It was the kind of love that made every new experience, no matter how unconventional, feel like a natural evolution of our journey together. As I sit here reflecting on everything we've shared, I feel an immense sense of gratitude. I'm grateful for my husband, for his unwavering love, and for the incredible bond we've created. We're not afraid to try new things, but we always do so with the understanding that our love is at the heart of it all. No matter what happens, we'll always have that. If there's one thing I've learned from this journey, it's that love and trust form the foundation of any strong relationship. When you have those two things, the possibilities are endless. Together you can grow, explore, and experience new things, knowing that every step will only strengthen your bond. For anyone reading this and wondering if they should try something new with their partner, my advice is simple. Communicate openly, trust each other, and always keep your love at the center of everything. If you do that, there's no limit to what you can discover together. Who knows, you might find that it brings you closer than ever before.